We talked about regrets from our childhood, and of course, my sister who beats up everybody. Treese talked about beating up Benny.
Benny, I do regret beating you up the time you jumped off the elevator, and we used to do no hit backs and we would jump off. Well, when he jumped off on his floor, he did like that, and he hit the side of my face. It wasn't like he was meaning to do it. It was like something we did, and he didn't know Mom was our mom. And Mom, I don't know where her foot came from, because that elevator door was like that much closed. She said, "What?"
Hey y'all, it's me, Lavette, back again with another episode of Loving My Growth, where we cover tips and topics that inspire growth. Today, I'm by myself, as y'all see. I don't have a guest, which is okay. It's the beginning of the year, 2022. Welcome into 2022. 2022 has not been very, how would I say? It's been rough already, and we just now in February. But hey, you get up and keep pushing. So with that being said, today my episode is about grief. It'll also cover my word of the day. So the word of the day is also grief. Grief is a strong emotion that people experience when they lose someone or something that was close to them. A lot of times we look at grief as just being about death of a person. And I'm learning that that is not true. It is a process. It's a natural reaction, but it is a process. And I'm going to cover exactly how grief of something in addition to someone is possible. So just a couple little tidbits. Grief is something that you get over, or something that you don't get over. You go through it, and it doesn't have a timeline. You know, sometimes it's like, okay, I know I'm guilty of saying, you know, this 2000 and something, your daddy died in 1990 something. Why are you still like tripping? Like, not just being extra about it. Well, grief has no timeline. You know, especially when that relationship is so close to you. You know, it could be 40 years from now. And it can still feel like it happened yesterday, especially if they're extremely close to you. And it comes in waves. One day you could be fine, and the next day you bawling your eyes out. But that's what we're going to talk about today. So there are a couple things. Grief comes in stages. When people are grieving, they tend to experience them, and it is a fact. And those stages, first stage is shock and denial. You cannot believe that this happened. This is happening. What am I going to do? Like, what's going on? I'm stuck, because your mind was set on what's going to happen with this situation or with this thing moving forward. Now, all of a sudden, it's gone, and you don't know what to do, what those plans were moving forward. The second stage is anger. Okay, now I'm mad. I'm mad that, you know, I lost my job. So I'm grieving the loss of a job. Couldn't believe it at first. Now I'm mad. How could this happen? Who do I want to blame it on? You know, it's all their fault. If it wasn't for them, this wouldn't have never happened. The next stage is questioning or bargaining. What happened? Why did this happen? what could I have done differently to stop this from happening? And the death of a parent. We've been taught growing up, ain't nothing definite but death and taxes. Growing up in the church, everybody's going to die. You don't know when your time is up. Only He knows it's going to happen. But even though we know this and we're constantly taught this, there's still the shock and the denial when it happens. Then comes the sadness, the depression, grief from a relationship. There's the stage where you can't eat, you can't sleep, you can't think, you can't get out of bed, you can't, hold a conversation, no smile. There's that sadness, that depression, which feels like it's going to go on forever. But, you usually come up out of that stage. The fifth stage is acceptance. At this stage, you realize, okay, this did happen. I got it. Most of my questions have been answered. There's still some that I don't think I'll get an answer to. I've been mad. I've been sad. I've cried. Now it's time to realize that there's nothing that I can do about the situation, and I need to move forward. I know I've experienced these stages in the loss of a job, and the loss of relationships, the loss of grandparents, and just recently my pops. And I can honestly see all these steps. And it's even when there's something called disenfranchised grief. I'm going to get into the different types of grief. But the disenfranchised grief is grief when you lose like a job, or someone that you really wasn't close to, like the grief that we felt when Prince died. I don't know Prince. I mean, I know of him. I'm a big fan, love his music, but personally, I don't know this person. However, that death was a blow to many because you grew up with his music. You grew up seeing his him entertaining us, and now we only have the memories or the things that he's done in the past. There's nothing coming up in the future from this person. Again, with the disenfranchised grief, the way someone is grieving is stigmatized, where you either don't cry at all or you cry too much. I know there was, when my paternal grandmother died, my cousin was so heartbroken. Yeah, she tried to jump in the grave. That would be something where it would be disenfranchised, because then everybody's like, why are you trying to jump in the grave? But that was her dealing with her grief and her loss. And everybody deals differently. Everybody deals differently. And some of us, including myself, I don't feel like I've grieved the loss of my grandmother, which is 1.5 years now. I don't even think I really grieved the death of my maternal grandfather, because I felt like I had to be there and be strong for my mother, my aunts, because that was their parent. And now with the passing of my pops, who raised me from 6 months old, but biologically he's my sister's father, and I had to be there for her. I couldn't outwardly cry and feel because I had to be there to support her and make sure everything was good with her. And so my pops passed on the 9th of January this year. And he'd been sick for a while. A couple months back, he was really sick, and we didn't think he was going to make it to September. And he did, and we took for granted that he did. So we thought, okay, he's going to make it to May of this year. He's going to come out. We're going to have a good time, celebrate him, celebrate my sister graduating with her PhD, and all the things. That's where our minds were set. A week before, he'd gotten sick and ended up in emergency room. And on the 9th, that Sunday, my sister called me. She was going to fly out to Texas. And the plan was I was going to get up, take her to the airport, and she was going to fly out, wait for him to get out the hospital, and bring him back here to California. So we had it all mapped out. Once he got here, we'll figure out how to maneuver and all that. I was on the phone with her planning, okay, I'll pick you up at 1, and, just going through the motions. And 30 minutes later, she sent a text message that she got the call that he passed. In that moment, definitely the stage of denial. And, you couldn't believe that this was really happening. At that point, I did ask her, I said, well, if you can cancel your flight, get a refund, and then we can just pack up my car and drive down there. But she decided to just move forward and continue, get on the flight, go. It was real quick. She was there a week. I packed up my car, my oldest sister and my daughter hopped in the car, and we went on a road trip. Mind you, if you know me, I don't like to drive, especially long distances. If it's going to be over an hour, I'm really not fooling with it. But my grief pushed me to get in that car and drive. I think it was like 22 hours. And I went through it. I wasn't afraid. There was no anxiety. It was just the point that I had to go and I had to be there. And we made it happen. It was definitely an adventure. Never been on a road trip like that before. First one. So it's something that I won't forget. And we got there. He had his service, which was wonderful. I did get to see him. My sister, he died from COVID. COVID got him. And so they weren't allowing kids to come to the viewing. And in the viewing, they had him draped so you couldn't touch him. However, I had to, in my grief, spend time by his coffin, touch his coffin, rub on his coffin. And so once we got back and I found out that I had COVID, my sister kind of joked and she was like, see, I told you, you was all up on the coffin trying to get in there with him and you shouldn't have been doing that. That's why, yeah, okay, I don't care. That was nothing. COVID was nothing compared to the fact that I got to be next to him. I got to try and feel that energy. That was me dealing with my grief. I do feel it. I cried a little, not as much, because I still have to be strong for, my mom. They were married. My sister, who's really going through it. And even the kids, this is definitely a significant loss for me. And my grandmother was 80 something, she actually joke, she'd been dying since she was like 40 something, every year. Oh, I don't think I'm going to make it. I don't think I'm going to make it. And she made it to her late 80s, and she lived a full life. I can say the same thing for my pops. He lived a full life. He was 73, 72, 73. I'm not good with numbers. He lived a full life. And thinking back, I think it was like 86 when he got sick, when he found out he had diabetes and he was in the hospital. Thought we were going to lose him then, but we didn't. So I'm grateful for the time that we did have with him. And he told me in August he was ready. He wasn't scared. He said, I'm ready. I'm if he want to come take me now, he can come take me now. And I think that gives me a sense of being okay, because he was ready. He wasn't scared. He didn't know COVID was going to do it, but he wasn't scared. He was ready. And same thing with my grandmother. So for me, I need to, actually, I retract that. In my research for this podcast, there was a lot of things that I found that, okay, I'm going to do that over. In my research for this podcast, I found a bunch of things. One thing was allowing people to grieve how they grieve. You can't dictate how someone's supposed to grieve. You have to let them go through what they're going through. I may cry and scream and throw things, but the other person may be okay and, sit there and not worry about certain things, or not show their emotion as much as the next person. Praying for someone, okay, but telling them, it's gonna be okay, this and that, they don't necessarily want to hear that. Just be there for them. Offer to do something that they need help with. That's why you see a lot of people, when there is a death, people cook meals, because you can't get up, you can't cook. I experienced a loss of a relationship, 9-year relationship last year. And I didn't think last year that I was going to make it through the year. I was devastated. Today, I'm like, what was I tripping off of? It was something that wasn't going to make it, even though in my mind I thought it was. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, but I couldn't get out the bed. And it wasn't really necessarily the person that I was grieving. It was the actual relationship, the time that you spent growing this family. Now today it's like, after the acceptance, I'm good. I'm actually, honestly, happier today than I was in any day in that relationship. And that's me understanding that I had to grieve that. And my sister Rika actually told me, she was like, you're grieving. Oh, grieving, it's a relationship. But the truth is, you grieve. You grieve the loss of a relationship. You grieve the loss of a job. And I've experienced both of those. You grieve the loss of a child, not necessarily, well, more so with what we call miscarriages. I've had like 7 of those. And I felt the grief in all those situations. And everybody's situation is different. You know, I still grieve the fact that I have a friend from high school who was almost full term when she miscarried. Most of my miscarriages happened before 20 weeks. So just to think how she felt after going through all those stages still kind of, hurts me. And, I feel the grief in my chest. So I do want to share a couple different types of griefs, because I did share the steps, but there's types, or should I say ways people grieve. Normal grief, emotional distress that comes from losing something. Again, some things. It could be you lost your house. You can grieve losing your house. It was yours. You're attached to it. You think, oh, I'm gonna live here forever. I'm hand it down to my kids, but life happens and financials didn't work out for you to keep that house. So you lose the house. You still go through the grief. Complicated grief, type of grief that worsens over time. I don't have an example of that. I may think of one and I'll let you know. Traumatic grief, the grief that you feel after the sudden and unexpected loss of a loved one. For me, my cousin Steven passed in 1999. He was only 16. The fact that it wasn't violent gave us some sense of relief. But, at 16, God took him. Cardiomyopathy, but God took him. And, still today, he would have been 38. And you still think, how many kids would he have had? What would he have been doing? And you still reach out to my aunt, that was her first son. So that's very traumatic. Chronic, the grief that just doesn't subside at all. Anticipatory, the grief you feel when you are waiting for your loved one to pass. A lot of people feel that when their loved ones are in hospice, which my grandmother was, because you never know when. They give you a timeline. It could be a week, it could be 3 weeks, it could be 4 weeks. Disenfranchised, which I explained earlier. There's distorted grief. You may give you feelings of guilt and anger behind losing something. It's my fault. I lost my relationship. What wasn't I doing? Well, we just wasn't made to last much longer. So very distorted. Exaggerated, start out as normal and grow with intensity as time passes. Masked grief, when experienced, you may not even be aware of the symptoms such as anger and impulse behavior related to the loss. You're just going through the motions. You don't even realize, oh, this is why I'm doing that. A lot of us feel that around anniversary dates of a loved one's loss, their birthdays, things like that. I'm not going to read all of them. Prolonged, when the normal grief lasts for 12 months or longer. I think a lot of that is when you didn't make peace. There were things that you were holding a grudge and you didn't get over, before that person passed, you didn't make peace with it. And then delayed. When your grief may be postponed for a matter of weeks, months, or sometimes years. And I think I've experienced a lot of that because I'm trying to make sure everybody else is good. I think we all, especially this year, we lost a lot of celebrities just within January of 2022. Sidney Poitier to be one. I had a list and I don't remember it, so I'm gonna grieve that loss real quick. With COVID and us getting older, we all tend to experience the loss a bit more. But we have to understand there's other losses that we also grieve. And once you understand it, I think you can actually go through it a lot quicker because you understand I've given you the stages. You can tell, okay, I'm mad as hell right now. I'm in the anger stage. Now I'm sad and I want to post about it every day. Been there. And now it's the acceptance, There's nothing that we could have done, and we've gotten a lot of years out of those two lives that I lost that were so dear to me. With that, be kind to each other. Be there for your friends, your loved ones. Definitely pray for their healing. Pray for their strength. Don't just say you're going to pray for them. If you don't know how to pray, just pray that their healing process isn't as long. Pray that when the waves come, they'll have the strength to get through it. With that being said, I just really wanted to get that out. It's definitely a process. Maybe a month or two from now, maybe on Pop's birthday, September 13th. Hopefully, I'll just remember the good times. I had a quote somewhere in here. I don't even know what I did with it. Oh, here it is. Hold on to the love, not the loss. My interpretation of that is think about the good times and that they're no longer in pain. They're no longer in this wicked world that we call Earth. With that being said, I'm not sharing, as I usually do, share a product or service. We won't be sharing a product and service this time, but I will say, with all my heart, I love my Pops. You can't take that from me. He will definitely be missed. But how some people say, we got an angel. So now we got two. Grandma and Pops. I love you guys. Thank you for tuning in. Not sure where we're going to go from here, but I'll see you guys on the next one.
Like, say, example, like you're telling somebody what they're doing is hurting you.
Mm-hmm.
And their response is, oh, well, that's who I am.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I think we also got to kind of do some work on ourselves, well, a whole lot of work within our families to kind of look at and see where we might be doing some harm to somebody,